The champagne toast was already underway when I arrived late to the annual gala. And let's thank Jennifer for her many years of service, CEO Richard Mallory announced from the stage, gesturing to my empty seat. She's decided to retire and pursue other interests. We wish her well. The room applauded. I was standing in the back in my red dress, watching 300 employees celebrate my departure. I pulled out my phone and texted my lawyer. Execute Plan B, board meeting. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Then I walked to the front of the ballroom. Richard's face went white when he saw me. Actually, I said, taking the microphone, I'm not going anywhere. But Richard, we should probably discuss your retirement plans. Majority shareholders tend to have strong opinions about CEOs who commit securities fraud. The microphone feedback screeched through the ballroom as I stood there, every eye locked on me. Richard's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his champagne glass. The silence was deafening. I'd built this company from nothing 12 years ago, working 18-hour days in a cramped office with 2 employees. Now we had 300. Richard had joined as CEO 5 years ago when I needed someone to handle operations, while I focused on innovation. I'd always been the quiet one, never seeking attention or credit. I owned 51% of the shares, but I'd let Richard shine in the spotlight. That was my first mistake. His announcement blindsided me completely. Retirement? At 39? I watched him fumble with his note cards, sweat beading on his forehead. Something was very wrong here. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, confused by the tension crackling between us. I handed the microphone back to Richard, smiled coldly, and walked out. My hands shook as I pushed through the ballroom doors into the cool night air. Sarah Chin found me in the parking lot 20 minutes later. She'd been my operations manager for 8 years, someone I trusted completely. Jennifer, what just happened in there? She touched my arm gently, concern filling her dark eyes. I couldn't speak at first. The betrayal felt physical, like someone had punched me in the stomach. He announced my retirement without telling me. I finally managed. Sarah, I own 51% of this company. How could he think he could just push me out? She looked genuinely shocked. That's insane. You're the reason this company exists. We sat on the hood of my car, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Sarah told me Richard had been acting strange lately, taking private calls and holding meetings without including key people. There's something else, she said quietly. Last week, I saw him meeting with Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb, my former rival. We'd competed viciously for market share 3 years ago before eventually collaborating on a major project. He'd become something close to a friend. Why would Richard meet with Marcus secretly? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my home office desk, pulling up every financial document I could access. The company's books looked normal at first glance. Revenue was strong, expenses reasonable, profit margins healthy. But then I noticed something odd in our shareholder agreement. There was a clause I'd never seen before, buried on page 47. It mentioned something about mandatory retirement provisions under specific circumstances. My heart raced as I read the dense legal language. The clause was vague, referencing situations where shareholder conflicts of interest might require temporary or permanent removal. Who had added this? I'd reviewed this agreement a dozen times when we brought Richard on board. This clause definitely wasn't there originally. I pulled up the digital signature data. The document had been modified 8 months ago. Richard's digital signature was there, along with our company lawyers. But my signature looked strange, slightly off from my usual style. My hands went cold. Had someone forged my signature? Marcus Webb called me at 7 in the morning. Jennifer, I heard about last night. We need to talk. His voice carried genuine concern, which surprised me. Why were you meeting with Richard last week? I asked bluntly. Silence stretched between us. So Sarah told you. Listen, it's not what you think. Richard approached me about a potential partnership opportunity. I was suspicious about his motivations, so I played along to figure out what he was really after. He suggested we meet at a coffee shop downtown, somewhere neutral. I agreed, despite my instincts screaming caution. Marcus had been ruthless in business before. Could I really trust him now? When I arrived, he was already there, looking tired. Richard's planning something big, Marcus said, sliding a folder across the table. He's been reaching out to multiple investors, shopping your company around. He wants to orchestrate a buyout. My stomach dropped. He can't do that without my approval. I'm the majority shareholder. Marcus leaned forward. That's where it gets interesting. He seems to think he's found a legal loophole. The folder Marcus gave me contained notes from his conversations with Richard. My CEO had apparently been telling investors that I was planning to step back from the company due to health concerns. My blood boiled reading those lies. There was also a list of suspicious financial transactions, small amounts transferred to offshore accounts over the past 6 months. Nothing huge, but enough to raise serious questions. Where did you get this information? I asked Marcus. He hesitated. I have connections in the investment community. When I heard Richard was making moves, I started asking questions. Jennifer, I know we competed hard before, but I respect what you've built. Something about Richard's approach felt wrong, so I dug deeper. I wanted to believe him, but trust didn't come easily anymore. That afternoon, a package arrived at my office. Brown paper wrapping, no return address, my name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single USB drive and a note. You need to see what's really happening. Check the encrypted files. Password, Phoenix 39. My hands trembled as I held the drive. Who sent this? How did they know about Richard's plans? I inserted the USB drive into my laptop, typing the password with shaking fingers. The drive contained dozens of files, encrypted communications between Richard and someone called Delta Investments. My eyes widened as I read through the messages. Richard had been planning this for over a year. The messages detailed a complex scheme to gradually dilute my ownership through a series of stock manipulations and legal maneuvers. There were references to the forged signature on the shareholder agreement. Delta Investments was promising Richard a massive payout once they gained control of my company. The final message was dated 3 days before the party. Everything is in place. Make the announcement. She'll be too shocked to respond effectively. By the time she recovers, the paperwork will be complete. My vision blurred with rage. This wasn't just business. This was personal betrayal by someone I'd trusted with my company's future. But who had sent me this information? The handwriting on the note looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. I called my lawyer immediately, forwarding all the files. Get me that emergency board meeting, I told him, and find out everything you can about Delta Investments. The company meeting the next morning was tense. Richard avoided eye contact as I walked into the conference room. Board members shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware something was wrong. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. Richard, let's discuss this retirement announcement you made without consulting me, the majority shareholder. He cleared his throat. Jennifer, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was simply acknowledging your desire to step back from daily operations. I never expressed any such desire. The room went silent. Richard's face flushed red. Well, given the challenges we're facing, I thought it might be best for the company if we brought in fresh leadership. What challenges? I demanded. He fumbled with his papers. There's the matter of the buyout offer from Delta Investments. They're offering terms that could benefit all shareholders significantly. There it was. He'd just admitted to negotiating a buyout without my knowledge. Board members exchanged worried glances. One of them, Patricia Huang, spoke up. Richard, you can't negotiate a buyout without majority shareholder approval. That's not how this works. After the meeting, I found an encrypted email in my inbox. The subject line read, "You need the full picture. Meet me tonight. Warehouse District, Building 7, 9 p.m. Come alone." Every instinct told me this was dangerous, but whoever sent those files knew more about Richard's plans than anyone else. I needed that information. Sarah caught me reviewing the email. "You're not seriously considering this?" she asked, reading over my shoulder. It could be a trap. I knew she was right, but I also knew I couldn't fight Richard without understanding the full scope of his scheme. "I have to go," I told her. She grabbed my arm. "Then I'm coming with you." The message said, "Come alone." I don't care what it said. You're not walking into a potentially dangerous situation by yourself. At 8:30, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Ms. Jennifer, this is a courtesy warning. Cancel your meeting tonight. Delta Investments doesn't appreciate interference. If you attend, we'll be forced to accelerate our plans. Your company will be bankrupt by Friday." The line went dead before I could respond. Fear gripped me as I stared at my phone. The threat was real. Delta Investments had power and resources I didn't fully understand yet. I called Marcus, explaining the situation. "Don't go," he urged. "If they're threatening bankruptcy, they have leverage we don't know about yet. We need more time to investigate." But time was exactly what I didn't have. Richard was moving quickly, and whoever sent me those files might have information that could stop him. Sarah stood firm. "If you're going, I'm going. That's final." We drove to the warehouse district in tense silence. Building 7 was dark, abandoned-looking. My heart pounded as we approached the entrance. The door creaked open. Inside, a single light bulb illuminated a figure standing in shadows. "You came," a woman's voice said, "even after the warning. That takes courage." She stepped into the light. I gasped. It was Victoria Reeves, CEO of Titanium Enterprises, one of our biggest competitors. "You?" I stammered. "You sent me the files?" Victoria smiled grimly. "We need to talk about what Richard Mallory is really planning, and why Delta Investments wants your company destroyed." Victoria gestured for us to sit at a makeshift table. "I know this looks suspicious," she began, "but Richard approached me 6 months ago with a proposal. He wanted Titanium Enterprises to partner with Delta Investments to acquire your company. When I refused, he threatened to destroy us too." She explained that Delta wasn't just an investment firm. They were a front for a massive corporate consolidation scheme, buying up successful companies and stripping them for parts. "They've done this to 17 companies in the past 3 years, Victoria said, sliding her business card across the table. I stared at the card, my mind reeling. "Why are you helping me?" "Because Richard's plan doesn't stop with your company. Delta wants to monopolize our entire industry sector. If they take you down, we're all vulnerable. Sometimes former competitors need to become allies against bigger threats." Sarah leaned forward. "What's their timeline?" "Fast. Richard's been moving pieces into place for months. The forged signature, the offshore accounts, the planted rumors about your health. They're building a legal case to force you out based on that shareholder agreement clause." Victoria pulled out another folder. "But here's what Richard doesn't know. I've been documenting everything." The next few days were a blur of meetings with lawyers and accountants. The evidence Victoria provided was damning. Richard had been systematically embezzling funds, small amounts that wouldn't trigger immediate alarms. He'd created shell companies to hide the transactions, all leading back to Delta Investments. My lawyer, David Park, was furious. "This is securities fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. We have enough to put Richard in prison." But I wanted more than legal victory. I wanted my company protected. At an emergency board meeting, Richard seemed confident, even smug. He didn't know I had the evidence yet. "The Delta Investments offer is generous," he announced. $20 million for complete acquisition. As CEO, I recommend we accept." Patricia spoke up. "Richard, Jennifer owns 51%. She has to approve this." "Actually," Richard said smoothly, "there's a clause in our shareholder agreement that allows the board to override majority shareholder decisions in cases of conflicts of interest. Jennifer's recent erratic behavior qualifies." My anger exploded. "Erratic behavior? You mean catching you embezzling company funds and forging my signature?" The boardroom erupted. Richard's face went pale. "That's a serious accusation," he stammered. I stood up, pulling out printed copies of every document Victoria had given me. "These are bank records showing your shell companies. These are emails between you and Delta Investments planning to strip my company for parts. And this is the forensic analysis proving you forged my signature on the shareholder agreement." I slid the documents across the table. Board members grabbed them, reading quickly. Patricia's eyes widened. "Richard, is this true?" He tried to maintain composure. "Those documents are fabricated. Jennifer's working with our competitors to undermine legitimate business decisions." "Interesting," I said calmly, "because I'm prepared to turn all of this over to federal prosecutors this afternoon. Unless you'd like to explain yourself first." Richard stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. Delta Investments won't let you win this. They have resources beyond anything you can imagine. Is that a threat? Richard's confidence cracked. It's a warning. I was trying to protect you. Jennifer. Delta was going to destroy this company anyway. I thought if I cooperated, at least I could negotiate better terms. I stared at Richard, trying to process his words. Protect me? By forging my signature and stealing company funds. He slumped back into his chair, suddenly looking defeated. You don't know the whole story. Delta Investments approached me 2 years ago, before I even considered this plan. They had information about financial irregularities they claimed could destroy the company. They said if I cooperated, they'd make everything go away quietly. What financial irregularities? I demanded. Richard wouldn't meet my eyes. The Phoenix Project. Your original expansion 3 years ago. Delta claims there were illegal tax shelters involved. My blood ran cold. The Phoenix Project had been our biggest risk, expanding into international markets. My previous CFO had handled the financial structuring. That was all legitimate, I said, but doubt crept into my voice. Richard shook his head. Delta has documents suggesting otherwise. They threatened to go public, unless I helped them acquire the company. I thought if I controlled the situation, I could minimize the damage. Patricia interrupted. Where's your proof of these allegations? Delta has everything, Richard admitted. Before I could respond, Marcus burst into the conference room, his face urgent. We need to evacuate. Now. Marcus pulled me aside as alarm bells started ringing. I've been monitoring Delta's communications. They just initiated something called Protocol Scorched Earth. They're going to expose fabricated evidence of financial fraud and tank your stock price before you can stop them. We rushed through the building as employees evacuated in confusion. Sarah grabbed my arm. What's happening? Richard's warning was real, I explained breathlessly. Delta's attacking. My phone exploded with notifications. News alerts. Stock price plummeting. Emergency calls from investors. Headlines screaming about fraud investigations. In 90 minutes, Delta Investments had nearly destroyed everything I'd built. We regrouped at my lawyer's office. David was already fielding calls from federal regulators. They've filed formal complaints with the SEC, he said grimly. They're claiming systematic financial fraud over 3 years. I felt numb. Based on what evidence? Fabricated documents, from what I can tell. But proving they're fabricated will take time we don't have. Victoria called. I'm seeing the same attack on my systems. Delta's going after anyone who might support you. This is coordinated. Then Sarah found something. A hidden folder in the office files labeled simply insurance. The folder contained documents my previous CFO had left before her sudden resignation 3 years ago. My hand shook as I read through them. She'd discovered Delta's scheme before anyone else, documented their attempts to infiltrate multiple companies, and collected evidence of their fabricated fraud allegations. There was a note addressed to me. Jennifer, if you're reading this, Delta has made their move. I couldn't stay and fight them. They threatened my family. But I left you everything you need. The Phoenix Project was completely legitimate. Delta created fake documents to build their case. The real evidence is in offshore account 7749B, registered under your name but controlled by them. They've been using your identity for money laundering. Expose that and their entire scheme collapses. I'm sorry I couldn't stay. Trust Victoria Reeves, she's fighting them too. And watch Marcus Webb, he's not what he seems. The note was signed Rebecca Morrison, my former CFO. I looked at Marcus, who'd been standing quietly in the corner. What does she mean? You're not what you seems. Marcus sighed heavily. I work for the FBI. Have been for 2 years. We've been investigating Delta Investments' corporate fraud network. Rebecca was our informant before she went into witness protection. The room spun as I processed Marcus's revelation. Your FBI? This entire time. He pulled out credentials. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you earlier. Our investigation required deep cover. When Richard approached me about the partnership, I knew Delta was targeting you. I've been feeding information to Victoria to keep you protected while we built our case. David stood up abruptly. If you're FBI, why didn't you stop Richard months ago? Because Richard isn't the target, Marcus explained. Delta Investments is part of a massive international fraud network. We needed them to make their move, so we could trace their full operation. Jennifer, your company was bait. I'm sorry, but it was the only way to expose everyone involved. Rage burned through me. You used my company as bait? We're about to take down a criminal organization that's destroyed dozens of companies and ruined thousands of lives, Marcus said firmly. Yes, I used your situation, but I also made sure we had everything needed to protect you. Victoria's voice came through speakerphone. He's telling the truth, Jennifer. I've been working with the FBI too. We couldn't tell you because Delta has infiltrated law enforcement. We didn't know who to trust. My world was falling apart and rebuilding simultaneously. What happens now? Marcus explained the FBI's plan. They've been monitoring Delta's communications, tracking money flows, and identifying key players. Richard's cooperation, willing or not, had helped them map the entire network. We need you to do something incredibly risky, Marcus said. Delta's leadership is planning a meeting tomorrow to finalize their takeover of your company. We need you to attend and wear a wire. I laughed bitterly. You want me to walk into a meeting with criminals who've threatened to destroy me? They think they've won, Victoria added. They'll be confident, careless. That's when people reveal their true plans. Jennifer, this is your chance to take back control and help take down the people who've targeted dozens of others like you. Sarah grabbed my hand. I'll go with you. No, I said firmly. This is my company, my fight. I'll do it. That night, I barely slept. The FBI briefed me on protocols, fitted me with sophisticated recording equipment, and reviewed every possible scenario. David filed emergency injunctions to freeze all company assets, preventing Delta from completing their takeover. At dawn, I stood in my closet, choosing what to wear to potentially the most dangerous meeting of my life. I selected a navy suit, simple jewelry, and determination as my armor. The meeting was scheduled at Delta's downtown offices. I walked through their marble lobby, past expensive artwork and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Everything screamed money and power. Richard was already there, looking worse than I'd ever seen him. Dark circles under his eyes, suit wrinkled, hands shaking slightly. Jennifer, he started, but I walked past him without acknowledgement. The conference room held 5 people I didn't recognize. At the head of the table sat a silver-haired man in an expensive suit. Ms. Jennifer, I'm Charles Donovan, CEO of Delta Investments. Thank you for coming. His smile was cold, predatory. Let's discuss your company's future. For the next hour, he laid out their complete plan. They'd acquired enough shares through proxy purchases to challenge my majority ownership. Combined with the fabricated fraud evidence, they could force a bankruptcy sale. Delta would purchase the company's assets for pennies on the dollar. Of course, Charles said smoothly. We're prepared to offer you a settlement. $5 million for your cooperation and silence about the whole affair. Walk away quietly and everyone benefits. I forced myself to stay calm. And if I refuse? Charles leaned back, his expression hardening. Then we proceed with criminal charges. The SEC investigation becomes very public. Your reputation is destroyed. You face potential prison time, and your company is dismantled anyway. Except in that scenario, you get nothing. Richard spoke up weakly. Jennifer, just take the deal. These people don't lose. Richard's right, another man added. We've done this successfully 17 times. You're not special. The recording device felt heavy under my jacket. I needed them to say more, to incriminate themselves completely. Walk me through exactly how you fabricated the fraud evidence, I said carefully. I want to understand your process. Charles smiled, apparently taking my question as acceptance of defeat. It's actually quite elegant. We identify companies with complex international operations. We create shell corporations that mirror their legitimate business structure. Then we manufacture transactions that appear illegal, planting evidence in their financial records. By the time anyone discovers the fraud, we've already initiated legal proceedings. Another executive chimed in. The beauty is that defending against fabricated charges costs millions and takes years. Most owners settle rather than fight. We acquire valuable companies for a fraction of their worth. And the offshore account registered in my name? I pressed. Pure genius, Charles said proudly. Charles continued explaining their scheme. oblivious to how thoroughly he was incriminating himself. We open accounts using stolen identities, route money through them to create patterns that suggest money laundering, then tip off authorities at precisely the right moment. The account holder appears guilty. We offer to purchase their company as a form of restitution to investors. Everyone thinks we're the heroes. I glanced at Richard, who looked physically ill. He'd gotten trapped in something far bigger than he'd understood. How did you approach Richard originally? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Standard procedure. We identify company executives who have gambling debts, affairs, or other vulnerabilities. Richard had borrowed money from questionable sources to cover personal investments. We offered to clear his debts in exchange for cooperation. Richard's face flushed with shame. The other executives laughed, sharing stories of their previous takeovers. Each company destroyed, each owner ruined, described like amusing anecdotes. My anger burned cold and focused. So you're offering me $5 million to walk away from a company worth $40 million? You won't get $40 million in bankruptcy proceedings, Charles countered. $5 million is generous under the circumstances. Take it. I stood up slowly. I have a counteroffer. The room went silent. Charles raised an eyebrow. You're not in a position to make counteroffers, Ms. Jennifer. I smiled for the first time since entering the room. Actually, I am. Because for the past hour, you've been confessing to securities fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and extortion to a room full of FBI agents. Confusion flashed across Charles's face. Then the doors burst open. Marcus entered with a dozen federal agents, guns drawn, badges displayed. FBI. Nobody move. Chaos erupted. Executives jumped from their seats. Charles lunged for his briefcase, but agents tackled him before he reached it. Richard slumped in his chair, tears streaming down his face. All of you are under arrest, Marcus announced, reading rights while agents handcuffed the Delta executives. He looked at me with something like respect. You did perfectly, Jennifer. We got everything. Victoria entered behind the agents, her expression triumphant. Charles Donovan, we've been hunting you for 3 years. Your operation just ended. As they led the criminals away, I felt strangely empty. Justice was happening, but my company still hung in the balance. Years of work, hundreds of employees depending on me, all uncertain. David arrived with more lawyers. The injunctions held. Company assets are protected. But Jennifer, we need to address the immediate crisis. The next 48 hours were insane. Federal prosecutors worked with our legal team to unwind Delta's manipulations. The fabricated fraud charges were dismissed. The offshore account registered in my name was proven to be identity theft. Media coverage shifted from scandal to vindication. But the damage to our stock price and reputation was real. Investors were spooked. Clients were nervous. Employees were terrified about job security. I called an all-hands company meeting. 300 employees packed into our main facility, their faces anxious. I stood on the stage where Richard had announced my fake retirement just weeks ago. I know you're scared, I began. The past few weeks have been chaotic and confusing. You've seen your leadership implode, watched our stock price crash, and wondered if your jobs were secure. The room was silent. Here's the truth. We were targeted by criminals who've destroyed 17 other companies. They infiltrated our leadership, manipulated our finances, and tried to steal everything we'd built together. But they failed, because we didn't just build a company, we built something they couldn't understand or replicate. We built a community. I detailed everything, holding nothing back. The FBI investigation, Marcus's undercover role, Victoria's help, my decision to wear the wire. I should have been more transparent with you throughout this, I admitted. That's my failure as a leader. Going forward, that changes. Sarah spoke next, explaining the financial recovery plan. We'd lost value, but the fundamentals were strong. With Richard's theft recovered and Delta's manipulation ended, we could rebuild. Patricia announced that the board had voted unanimously to restructure leadership. Richard's position was obviously vacant, but they'd also created a new role, Chief Operating Officer, which they offered to Marcus. After the FBI investigation concludes, Patricia said, we'd like Marcus to join officially. His protection of this company during the crisis demonstrated the kind of loyalty we value. Marcus, standing at the back of the room, nodded acceptance. Victoria stood as well. Titanium Enterprises would like to propose a formal partnership. Not an acquisition, but collaboration. Two strong companies working together is better than one company standing alone. The employees erupted in applause. Several people were crying. Over the following weeks, we implemented massive changes. Complete financial audits, new security protocols, transparent communication channels. I established an employee advisory board, giving workers direct input into company decisions. The recovery was faster than anyone expected. Our clients, seeing how we'd fought back against corporate criminals, actually increased their loyalty. New businesses reached out, wanting to work with a company that had proven its integrity under pressure. 3 months after that disastrous party, we held another company gathering. This time, I planned the party myself. Nothing fancy, just honest celebration with the people who'd stayed loyal through crisis. I stood on the same stage, looking out at familiar faces. 3 months ago, someone tried to steal my company by announcing my retirement without my knowledge. Tonight, I'm standing here to announce something different. This company isn't mine anymore. It belongs to all of us. I detailed a new equity sharing program, giving every employee ownership stakes based on tenure and contribution. You stayed through uncertainty. You trusted when trust seemed impossible. You deserve to share in the success you've helped create. The crowd stood and applauded, many crying openly. Sarah hugged me tightly. You did it, she whispered. You saved everything. Marcus approached after the formal announcements ended. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth earlier. The investigation required complete secrecy. I understand now, I said. Though I'm still angry you used my company as bait. Would you have done it differently if you'd known the full picture? I thought about that. Probably not. Taking down Delta saved other companies from the same fate. Sometimes the right choice isn't the easy one. Victoria joined us, raising her champagne glass. To unlikely allies and hard-won victories, we toasted together, 3 former competitors who'd become genuine friends through crisis. Richard sent a letter from prison, where he was serving time for his role in the fraud. He apologized, explained his desperation, and wished me success. Standing on my office balcony 6 months later, I reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the fight, the victory, and the transformation. My company was stronger than ever. Our stock price had recovered and exceeded previous highs. Employee satisfaction was at record levels. The equity sharing program had created genuine investment from everyone in our success. But more than that, I'd learned something crucial about leadership. Being humble and selfless was important, but so was being vigilant. I trusted too easily, delegated too completely, and nearly lost everything because of it. True leadership meant balancing trust with accountability, kindness with strength. The FBI's investigation led to dozens of arrests. Delta Investments was dismantled. Charles Donovan faced life in prison. 17 other companies they destroyed were able to pursue restitution. I'd started a foundation to help businesses targeted by corporate fraud, providing legal resources and support. Sometimes victims just need someone who understands their fight. Sarah knocked on my door. Ready for the board meeting? I smiled. Absolutely. As we walked through the office, employees greeted us warmly. This wasn't just my company anymore. It was our company, built on integrity, tested by crisis, and stronger for having survived. If you've ever felt undervalued, betrayed by someone you trusted, or wondered if doing the right thing matters, remember this. Your integrity is your greatest asset. Protect it fiercely, but never let others define your worth. Sometimes the greatest victories come from refusing to surrender even when everything seems lost. Subscribe to hear more stories about resilience, justice, and the power of standing firm in your truth. Because in the end, trust and perseverance always find their way to the light.